30 plus years, I've seen every type of child grow up.
Instead of giving me what I wanted, she gave me what I needed, which was truth.
Don't let emotions win. Let truth win.
Do your very best, and you should have a lot of fun while you do it. And the better you get at something, the more fun you're going to have at something.
You moms and dads are wired with everything you need to be a parent to a great kid. Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. This is episode number 26, Raising Great Boys. I'm your host, Dr. Meg Meeker. Today, I will be speaking with boy guru and my friend, one of the smartest men I know, Dr. Leonard Sax. He's the author of Boys Adrift. We're going to be talking about the challenges boys face today and how you, their parent or grandparent, aunt or uncle if you're listening, can raise strong, self-confident men. Also in this episode, I'll be featuring a listener question from a mom struggling to keep her second grader focused in school. As always, I'll share my points to ponder for you to start using right away. And parents, remember, don't just download these episodes, click subscribe, because when you do that, you're joining my parenting revolution. And every new episode will automatically show up in your subscribed list. You won't regret it, I promise. And I'd love for you to write us a review on iTunes and let me know what you think of these podcasts. Remember, they're yours, not mine. Also, not only are we on iTunes, but the Parenting Great Kids podcast is also now available in the Google Play Store and on Stitcher. So no matter where you get your podcast, subscribe today and don't miss one single episode. Many of you know that I have a passion about the relationship between children and fathers. There's so many good men out there trying to be good fathers, and they're not getting much help. Every child wants to know his father because he's born with an innate belief that you, his dad, are his hero. And who wants to be denied a hero, especially a personal one? Whatever your situation in life, the fact that you are a father doesn't change. And neither does the fact that your children need you. If you are married, divorced, widowed, or a stepfather, and you want what is best for your children, then I have something to share with you. My new book, Hero, Becoming the Strong Father Your Children Need, will release May 15th, and it is now available for pre-order at HeroDadBook.com. In Hero, I share how and why you should strive to be a hero father and the impact your presence and involvement has on your children. When you pre-order Hero, you will also receive a bundle of free digital resources created especially for you. For more information on Hero and all the free bonus materials, just visit HeroDadBook.com. That's HeroDadBook.com and pre-order your copy today. So parents, thanks for listening. This is episode number 26. Stay with us. Now let's go to my points to ponder. 1, embrace your son's masculinity and let him be a boy. Friends, I'm going to do a different show with Dr. Sax because we talked off air about continuing our conversation on helping your son develop a healthy, strong sexuality. You know, kids are very confused sexually today because parents remember the development of a sexuality in a boy or girl is complicated. It's complex. It's beautifully complex. One of the greatest disservices that we do to our children today is we slap a simple answer on a complicated issue. The development of a sexuality in a child takes place over years. Many people are taught they wake up one day and they know that they're either bi, gay, or straight, or transsexual. We teach that to our kids. You walk into second grade and you declare, I'm either bi, straight, or gay, or maybe I'm transgender. And I should know that at 8 years old. Kids don't know that. The development of your son's sexuality is beautifully complex. It's connected to his ability to trust people, to love, to his view of himself. It's connected to his sense of value, to his sense of meaning and purpose in life. The sexuality is connected to so many other dimensions of your son's makeup. It's not simple. It's connected to social cues that he gets. It's connected to his worldview, to his religious beliefs. So for somebody to come along and stamp your child as bi, straight, or gay, or transgender when he's in 2nd grade or 5th grade or 7th grade is an enormous disservice to your child. Now, I know that this is a very hot topic, but I'm talking to you as a mom or a dad who's rearing a complicated person, a complicated boy who's living and sleeping and eating in your home. That son deserves your best efforts at slowing his life down and helping him take the time to figure out who he is, what his life means, why he was put on this earth, and what his significance is. Because when you teach a boy that his sexuality is good and strong and complex, you're teaching him that his life has great and deep value. So embrace your son's sexuality and his masculinity and give it time to develop. Second, recognize that the temptations your son will face in his life are going to be great, highly sexually charged, more sexually charged, and laced with more sexual messages than when you were growing up. Dads, it's different for your sons today than it was when you were a boy. Moms, the sexual landscape that your son faces is very different from what you faced. First of all, it's very hard for us mothers to understand what puberty is like for an 11, 12, 13-year-old boy. It just is. We are wired differently. You can say we're wired the same. We are not. Boys have different physiology than girls do. And when boys go through puberty, they feel different sensations. They think different thoughts. Yes, they have emotional fluctuations. Yes, they have hormonal changes, but they experience them very differently than girls do. That's biology 101, friends. Whether you like it or whether you're not, that's what your child is going through. And you can ignore it and you can try to say it isn't what it is, but you're going to frustrate your child to no end because you're going to make your child feel kind of crazy. If you tell your son he's not going to feel certain emotions when he's going through puberty, you're going to make him feel crazy because he'll feel feelings. And then you tell him he isn't feeling those feelings or he shouldn't have those sensations. You're going to make him feel crazy because he knows he does. And he's going to go with what you say over what he feels because he believes that you are the authority. And that's okay, but you're going to make him feel kind of crazy. So you need to recognize the temptations your son faces are very different from you. What are those temptations? The sexual imagery, the violence in the video games, the violence in television. Your son is going to believe by the time he's in 7th or 8th grade that if he doesn't lose his virginity soon, he's nobody. You need to counter those messages. Maybe you didn't have that temptation. Your son has them now. So you need to embrace that and you need to link arms with your son and say, son, these are the temptations that you will face. And I faced some. They were a little bit different. But my job as your mom or dad is to stay on your side in this. Not to tell you you're a bad kid, not to tell you that the temptations are wrong, not to tell you that the feelings and the urges you have are bad. My job is to help you deal with those and navigate a world that doesn't like you very much. That's your job. You need to teach your son, I'm not the enemy. Mom and dad's not the enemy. The culture's the enemy. I'm your friend. So it's you and I against the culture, not you and the culture against me. Third, honor your son's need to separate during the teen years. Now, moms, hear me. I'm the mother of a son, a fabulous son. I adore my son. Mothers feel differently towards their sons than we do our daughters. And in many ways, we're harder on our daughters than we are our sons. Why? Because we identify with our daughters. We don't identify with our sons. Dads are harder on their sons than they are on their daughters because dads identify with their sons. They push their sons. They tell their sons ridiculous things in 1st and 2nd grade, like a good friend of mine who's a psychologist who said to his son one day, man up. You don't need to cry in school. Well, that doesn't really work. He can't man up because he's not a man yet. He's 8. But fathers push their sons and mothers push their daughters. So moms, we in particular have real difficulty letting our sons leave us in puberty. Sons very often are close to their mothers from ages 1 to 10. They bond with us. I wrote a whole book on mothers and sons. It was a ball. I loved writing it. We have a hard time letting go because we want them to be a boy, because boys need their mothers, and we love this intimacy with our boys. It's warm. It feels good. It makes us feel like good moms if our sons talk to us and they don't want to ignore us. It doesn't feel good when our boys tell us they don't need us anymore. But we've got to learn to deal with that. And we've got to learn that over the teen years, their life is about dad, not us. Why? They're visual people. Boys need to see how men behave. They need to hear how men talk in order to know how to be a man. They need to live it and watch it in order to integrate it into their person. It's creepy for a teenage boy to feel close to mom, and that's okay. We need to let them go so that they don't feel creepy, because here's the good news. Once we allow our boys to separate from us, they come back as adults. And then when they're in their 20s, we can reestablish a healthy, strong adult-to-adult relationship with our sons. It's different. We have to let our boys go, but we don't have to let our girls go. Dads don't necessarily have to let their boys go. They don't have to let their daughters go. It's very specific to the mother-son relationship. We have to separate. We have to allow our boys to separate from us during the teen years. We have to push them to want to do things on their own. We have to say, honey, if you don't understand your algebra, you've got to figure it out. If you don't know how to navigate this, I'm here for you. But let me tell you something. I believe that you know how to handle this issue. I know you're smart enough to do this, so go do it. You don't need my help. You know how to do laundry. You know how to cook. Do I want to cook all your favorite foods every night? Of course I do. But you don't need me to. You can cook. Go ahead. I'll be home at 9:00 tonight. This is painful for mothers because we're so involved and we want to be so connected to our sons. And dads don't get this about mothers and they get frustrated. Why are you trying to baby my son? We're not trying to baby them. We're trying to keep them close because we don't understand. Let them go. And this is why so many boys aren't launching either, because moms want to keep them so close because we wrongly believe that they need us a lot more than they really do. They need us in very different ways, so we need to be ready to let them go. Honor your sons' need to separate during the teen years, dads and moms. I want to turn now and have you listen in on a conversation that I had with Dr. Sax about raising great boys. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. Well, Dr. Sax, you're an MD, you're a PhD psychologist, which is a fabulous combination, and you wrote a book called Boys Adrift. So I personally consider you somewhat of a boy guru. And you talk about a phenomenon that I see in my pediatric practice as well, and that is that many boys are growing into young adults who don't have adequate motivation. They're underachievers. And when you look at the studies, we're seeing girls really passing boys by in droves as far as, how many are graduating from high school, how many graduating from college, how many are going on to graduate school, and so forth. What's going on with our boys?
Well, indeed, you'll find in the very same family. Parents will tell you, my daughter is working hard, double major at university, extremely successful at high school. And my son is a goofball who graduated high school, went to college for a few years, dropped out. He's back at home playing video games in the basement. And he's perfectly content with that. The parents are pulling their hair out. Son spends his time playing video games, looking at pornography, and works a few hours a week at the coffee shop. And the parents are, where is this coming from? Our daughter is so successful, and our son is a goofball. And the foundation is really quite different. What girls are looking for is different from what boys are looking for. And what you'll find is that a lot of boys feel very comfortable in their world because they feel that they've accomplished a great deal because they completed all the missions in Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. And they're hanging out with a group of guys. And what will impress the guys in that group is if you finished all the missions in Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. Working hard at your job or working hard at university to get a 4-year degree is not going to raise your status in the eyes of those boys. So the society has changed and the technology has created new challenges. And a lot of parents don't understand, for example, how video games have disengaged boys from the real world. And when you talk to parents, I sometimes find that when you talk to them about video games, they're thinking about Pac-Man or Pong. And they're like, how would anyone get addicted to a video game? And I say, look, you need to watch these video games. They're compelling. The physics are very real. And it's not easy to complete all the missions in Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. It will take many hours of time and effort. And so these boys feel like they're great achievers, but they're in their own little world, and that world leads nowhere.
You know, you and I have talked about the issues that children face with screen time, particularly social media for girls and video games for boys.
Right.
Why do boys become so addicted? And then why are these games so harmful? You just began touching on that. So let's dig a little deeper into that.
Okay, so many boys have this aggressive impulse. They want to conquer. They want to win. They want to be king of the world. And school has changed in a way that has really criminalized that. Even two boys throwing snowballs at one another can now commonly in the United States get in big trouble. Throwing snowballs absolutely prohibited at most American schools. Pointing fingers at each other saying, bang, bang, you're dead can get you in trouble at American schools. And the result is that a lot of boys say, school's stupid. I'm going to go home and play Grand Theft Auto. And the video games totally get this. And if a boy invests time and effort in a game like Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Grand Theft Auto, and gets really good at shooting other people and not getting shot himself, he will conquer. He will be the master. So for many boys, this really feeds into something primal. That's not true for girls. Girls are much less likely to get a big thrill out of killing 20 aliens, as you do in Halo, for example. But boys do. And because of these differences between girls and boys are much more prone to get addicted to video games.
So clearly you don't believe in gender neutrality here, which I, of course, don't either, because what you've really just described is an enormous difference between the mindset and the mind of a girl versus a boy. And you're absolutely right on. And I think that parents need to recognize this. You know, boys early on, you know, you look at these little toddlers. My grandson is, 18 months old, and he loves books about trucks and cars and things that move. And I can put a book about, Peppa Pig in front of him, and then I can put a book with a lot of trucks and things, and he always gravitates that. So it continues through life where boys like this aggressive challenge. They like to see things move and do things. And we need to accept this. I think this whole idea of gender neutrality is it's such a joke, and it's so hard for our kids, and we do such a huge disservice to them because we want to take a lot of the traditionally masculine character qualities out of boys. Like, no, you can't throw snowballs because you're going to be a bully. Well, okay, we're not advocating violence at school here, but there's a huge difference between that and saying, boys behave and think differently than girls right from the get-go.
Well, and you can channel that in ways that are very constructive, and you can make a school friendly to boys without making it unfriendly to girls. So St. Andrews is a school I visited up north of Toronto, and they have a very simple rule. If you want to throw snowballs, go to the football field. If you don't want snowballs thrown at you, then don't go to the football field. It's a very simple rule. It's worked very well, and I've worked with schools across the United States and Canada to implement that. Now, some schools, when they do that, they'll require parents to sign a letter that the lawyer has drawn up saying if somebody gets hurt, that the school won't be held harmless. They have a bucket of goggles, and you have to put on goggles before you go out to throw snowballs so that nobody gets an eye injury. But they've had no problems with this. And when you do this at a co-ed at school, you'll find that about 80% of the kids throwing snowballs are boys, but about 20% are girls. Some girls like to throw snowballs.
Sure.
Some boys don't like to throw snowballs. That's fine. Gender is complicated. But create a space on the school property where kids can throw snowballs at one another. Because what's happening right now in most American schools is two boys are throwing snowballs, and teacher runs out and says, "What are you guys doing? Not allowed to do that here. You want to throw snowballs? Go somewhere else. Leave the school." And the unspoken message the boys are getting is, hey, school's not the place for you. School's not. Boys doing things that boys have always done now gets boys in trouble.
Yeah.
If I can segue into that, if you don't mind. So I was at another American school, 10th grade English. Assignment was to write a story about anything you like. And a boy wrote a story about the Battle of Stalingrad, winter 1942. And the story is told from the perspective of a Russian soldier on patrol who's ambushed by a German who's trying to stab him with a knife. And the Russian fires his rifle at point-blank range into the face of the German soldier. And then the boy describes what happens when you fire a rifle in another man's face. What happens is the head explodes. And a piece of brain goes this way, a piece of eyeball goes this way, a piece of chin goes that way. This boy was suspended from his school, and the parents were told he would not be allowed to return until they had obtained an assessment from a licensed professional assuring the school that the boy posed no imminent danger to himself or to others. And when the parents shared that story with me, it really struck a chord because I wrote a similar story. 1977, lead teacher for English at our high school, Shaker Heights High School in Ohio, nominated me and 3 other students to sit for a competition administered by National Council of Teachers of English, NCTE. So the proctor gives each of us a blue book and says, you have 45 minutes, write a story. So I wrote a story about East German refugees trying to escape to West Germany, crossing a minefield in the middle of the night, and one of them steps on a mine. Just before he gets to the border, he steps on a mine. It blows off his left leg to the hip, right leg to the knee. So now he's crawling west, blood pouring out of the stumps where his legs used to be. The East German guards are shooting at him, but missing, and the West German guards are calling out to him, blood pouring out of his legs, and finally reaches the border, and the guards lift him to take him to the hospital, and he dies. The end. So my own mom died in September 2008, and I was going through her papers after her death and found that she had saved the certificate sent to our home in 1977 by the National Council of Teachers of English, awarding me their highest honor in creative writing.
Wow.
Boys have always written about traumatic amputation and violent death. It used to get you an award. Now it can get you suspended. Boys doing things that boys have always done, as I just said, can get you in trouble. And the result is that a lot of boys say, school's stupid. School's for girls. I'm going to go home and play Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You can make the school friendly to boys without making it unfriendly to girls.
You know, I love that because you're absolutely right. We're such a conflicted society, and we don't want to accept the fact that a boy writes about this is his way of sort of processing things, and his imagination is so important. And, you know, Bruno Bettelheim wrote about this as well and sort of saying it's so important for us to be thinkers. And that's how boys sort of resolve a lot of things. And it's a wonderful thing to write a story like that and to pick through that. Let's talk about how else are schools causing trouble for boys? Because you're absolutely right. A lot of boys in elementary school in particular feel like they don't fit.
Another change that has been harmful to boys disproportionately is the acceleration of the early curriculum. 30 years ago, kindergarten was about playing duck, duck, goose and finger painting and singing in rounds. Now, in almost all American schools, kindergarten is about learning to read and write. Mm-hmm. In other words, kindergarten has become first grade. Mm-hmm. We now ask 5-year-olds to sit still and learn about phonics in 60 or 90-minute sessions, and that is not developmentally appropriate for many 5-year-old boys. And 5-year-old boys have more difficulty sitting still and being quiet than 5-year-old girls do, and the result is the teacher sends a note home and says, you know, Justin's having trouble sitting still and being quiet. You should get him evaluated. And in this country, if that child goes to a child psychiatrist, odds are very high that psychiatrist is going to prescribe a medication like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, Concerta, Metadate, Focalin, Detrana. And I have led workshops for the child psychiatrists. And they have said, look, if this kid comes in and I give him the medication, everybody's happy. Right. He sits still, teacher's happy, parents happy, everybody's happy. If I say, look, the problem here is not so much with the child, but with the school. The school is doing it wrong. They shouldn't expect 5-year-old boys to sit still and be quiet for an hour at a time. I'm going to get in trouble. The principal is going to contact our medical director and say that I'm bad-mouthing the school. I'm going to get bad comments. The parents were coming in expecting a medication, and I didn't give them one. I'm going to get bad reviews on Yelp and on Google. You know what? I'll write the prescription, everybody's happy. If I don't write the prescription, everybody gets in trouble. I actually published a scholarly article, sent out questionnaires to hundreds of child psychiatrists and pediatricians and asked them, who is suggesting the diagnosis and what do you do next? And published a scholarly article on this topic. And it was just a questionnaire, but the doctors wrote these essays. And we said at the back, is there anything you'd like to add? And they wrote these essays saying, look, I really don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. I'm not at all convinced this is in the child's best interest, but I feel like I don't have a choice because American culture is all about doing it earlier, doing it faster. And we now have so much good research that this acceleration is harmful. And it's harmful to both girls and boys, but it has resulted in boys disengaging altogether from school and regarding school as unfriendly to boys.
So what do you say to a parent of a second grade boy who comes in and you don't really think he has ADHD? He's bouncy. He's having a hard time focusing. He maybe is not reading very well, but he's a happy kid. Rather than giving that parent medication for that child, what do you suggest the parent do?
Very often I'll recommend that we change the school. I will say, look, let's find a different school that's more experiential, that's more outdoors, that's hands-on, like a Montessori school or a Waldorf school, mixed grades where, or you know what? Let's repeat second grade, but at a different school with a different peer group. So he won't have that sense of being held back. You never want to hold a child back at the same school because then you're sending a message to that child, you're so dumb, you can't even go on to the next grade with your peers. If you're going to hold a child back, and often that's a good intervention for these boys, they need to be in a grade that's doing things that are more age appropriate for them. So start them over at second grade at a different school with a more outdoor curriculum, a more hands-on curriculum. And that's been very helpful in some cases.
Yeah. Are you an advocate of single-sex schools?
If it's the right school. You know, I actually took a 5-year sabbatical from medical practice because I was so impressed by some of the boys' schools I had visited. 15 years ago, I visited a boys' school, third grade classroom, and the boys were all jumping up and down to spell the word abbreviate. And afterwards, they left, and I said to the teacher, where are the chairs? There are no chairs in this classroom. And she said, well, Dr. Sax, everybody knows when an 8-year-old boy sits down, his brain shuts off. I said, well, excuse me, I didn't know that. But you'll find, I found a lot of boys' schools really did understand that and were very boy-friendly. So if there is such a school nearby and it's boy-friendly and they understand how to do this, then that's great. But there aren't many such schools. There are not many boys' elementary schools in the United States. So that often is simply not an option, or if it's an option, it's crazy expensive and parents cannot afford it. But if you live in a major urban area, there are other schools, and you can find one that is more boy-friendly, that understands this. And if you can't find one, then you have to move. And I'm not telling parents to do anything we didn't do ourselves. My wife and I were living in rural Maryland, and we felt there was no school that was a good fit for our daughter. So we moved from Maryland to Chester County, Pennsylvania, for our daughter to be near the school that she has now attended for the past 6 years.
Parents, I hope you're enjoying this conversation with Dr. Leonard Sax. We need to take a quick break right now, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you cooked a meal you were proud of? I'm talking something that was healthy, delicious, and that your kids actually ate. Can't remember? It's time for you and your family to try Sunbasket. Sunbasket's new family menu makes it easy to cook delicious, seasonal, and nutritionist-approved recipes the whole family will love. You'll receive organic, non-GMO ingredients from the best farms and fishermen right to your door. Every Sunbasket recipe comes with pre-measured ingredients and easy-to-follow directions. And friends, I've tried several of the different Sunbasket recipes, and I love them, and so does my very picky husband. Family menu recipes are designed for busy families with simple prep and easy cleanup in mind. And they're cleverly packed with veggies even the kids will eat. Each week, Sunbasket features a recipe co-created with Chef Tyler Florence of the Food Network. Choose from gluten-free, vegetarian, paleo-friendly, and chef's choice options. Get 3 meals free when you go to sunbasket.com/Meg today. That's sunbasket.com/Meg. Did you know that 82% of children are exposed to dangerous online content before they're 11 years old? And 70% of children hide their online activities from their parents? If you're a parent that cares about keeping your kids safe online, look no further than NANNY. NANNY is a 5-time winner of PC Magazine's Editor's Choice Award for Parental Controls. Families use NANNY to protect their children from pornography, online predators, cyberbullying, and other threats to their safety. Unlike other parental controls that simply block a list of websites, NANNY's dynamic filter scans and analyzes at the web page level to determine if it's appropriate for your child. NANNY allows the good pages but blocks the bad pages. Other NANNY features include internet filtering in 20 different categories with predefined age-based settings, pause the internet with time limits and schedules for internet use, alerts to know when websites are blocked, when children request additional access or time, and summary reports to review online activity. Join the millions of parents who have chosen NANNY to protect their families. Go to netnanny.com today and use coupon code MEEKER to receive a special 40% discount on their family protection passes that cover Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac devices. That's promo code MEEKER. So let's try to just pull this all full circle, because we started our podcast talking about how boys are growing into young adults without motivation. And so do you feel that the combination here of what video games are giving boys and how schools have changed for boys and how boys can often be mislabeled and given medications that they really don't need, is this all playing into raising a boy that's going to turn out unmotivated and sort of hit his early 20s and go, I just don't like any of this?
It is. And again, that piece regarding the medications, in my book, Boys Adrift, I talk about there's now lots of good scholarly research showing that medications like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, Concerta, Metadate, these medications damage the nucleus accumbens, the motivational center of the brain. We now have very good research in humans showing that these medications actually shrink the nucleus accumbens in human beings. These are not safe medications, and yet this research is not well known to the prescribing physician. It is not well known to the parents. So you don't want your kid to be on those medications. There are other interventions that are safer. There are other medications that are safer, if that is the diagnosis. But the video games are so immensely harmful in switching, in changing kids' motivation away from the real world into the virtual world. This boy no longer cares about getting an A instead of a B in Spanish. He wants to finish all the missions in Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty. So my first recommendation to parents is you've got to turn off the screens and limit, govern, and guide your kids' use of video games. It's your job. You cannot expect your son to do this. No pornography. If your son has a phone, you've got to install software like NetNanny or My Mobile Watchdog, because the most common way that American boys are looking at porn is on their phone. And as I said, make sure the school is a good match for your son. And if it's not a good match, if it's not boy-friendly, if boys are getting in trouble at that school for doing things that boys have always done, like writing stories about World War II or pointing fingers at each other saying, bang, bang, you're dead, find a different school. And the earlier, the better.
Well, that is wonderful, wonderful advice, and it's a great place for us to land. There's so much to talk about, because as you were talking about video games and boys with ADHD, one of the things I find very commonly is parents with boys who have difficulty with school and who don't pay attention or they are hyperactive. They love these games. And parents will say, well, why can my son sit for 5 hours and do a video game, but he can't read or write? And I say, well, because the words on the page aren't jumping and talking to him and firing things.
And we now have very good research where scientists have studied a big group of kids over a period of time and find very clearly the more time kids spend playing video games, the more likely they are subsequently to be diagnosed with ADHD. And it really makes you think that maybe the video games are causing ADHD. You really, and the American Academy of Pediatrics is right on top of this. And their latest guidelines came out in October for use of screens. Kids should not be looking at screens. And if they're looking at screens, it should be high-quality screen time, like a parent and child watching The Sound of Music together. It should not be your son at 6 years of age in his bedroom playing a video game. And yet I see parents coming into the office and they're putting a screen in their kid's hand to distract them during the visit. So, and I get negative reviews from parents as well who say, hey, I brought my kid in for a sore throat and Dr. Sax gave me a lecture about how my kids shouldn't be playing video games all the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think that's what you got to do.
That's what you have to do. So you're really sort of saying we're creating attention issues.
I think so. I think when you look internationally, why are kids in the United States 14 times more likely to have ADD compared to kids in England and Scotland? I've done a lot of events in England and Scotland, and I can tell you they have screens, but the parents don't let the kids play video games for hours at a time, as a rule.
One more question. It's a one-word answer because I get this all the time. How many hours a day is it okay for a child to be looking at a screen?
40 minutes a night on school nights, an hour a day on weekends. Those are the guidelines from Craig Anderson. Craig Anderson and Doug Gentile are the two scholars who've done the most work on video games. You'll find all that research in the new edition of Boys Adrift. Take a look at the chapter on video games. It is astonishing and terrifying, the new research on video games, showing that the more times boys spend playing video games, the more likely they are to have ADHD, the more likely they are to become obese, the more likely they are to have poor social skills. So video games have a whole raft of these really negative consequences, and the research is just not getting reported on, which upsets me. On the contrary, the same week that one of these really terrifying studies came out, New York Times Sunday Magazine had a cover story that was basically a commercial for Minecraft about how wonderful Minecraft is and how creative kids are playing this game. They're not. Melissa of Melissa and Doug, Melissa Bernstein, she had a wonderful article for Time Magazine where she talked about taking her 11-year-old to a softball game with her siblings, and even a few years ago, the siblings would have been playing, they would have been interacting, they would have been playing tag, they would have been doing made-up games, but now they're all sitting looking at a screen. And it was bases loaded, ninth inning, but nobody was cheering, nobody was paying attention. All the kids were looking at their screen. And Melissa said, you know what? We are destroying kids' creativity.
Right. Yeah.
Because a kid playing Minecraft is not creative. He's moving things around in a world a grown-up has made. Right. That kid outdoors, making up a game with his friends, that's creative. Creating a story, that's where kids get creativity. And in my book, The Collapse of Parenting, I document there's been an astonishing collapse of creativity among American kids in the last 15 years. American kids are now less creative than American kids were 15 years ago. Well, what happened over the last 15 years? Screens happened. Right. Video games happened. And the consequences are scary, and a lot of parents just don't know.
There you go. You've heard it from the master, Dr. Leonard Sax. Well, you have been so gracious with your time. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Now let's get social. All right, parents. I want to hear from you and interact with you. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Meg Meeker, MD. Or if you have questions, please write to me and send them. Ask Meg at megmeekermd.com. Today I have a question from Vicky who writes, Dear Dr. Meg, my 7-year-old son is in 2nd grade and having the same problem in school for the 3rd year. He gets distracted with anything around him and cannot finish his work on time. It can take him 2 weeks to finish projects other kids complete in 3 days. I know he's smart. When I help him with his homework, he understands it very well. He gets math and he loves books. I've tried different things to help him become faster at doing things, but I feel I have failed. What should I do? Well, Vicki, I have good news for you. Very good news for you. Your son is probably very, very normal. Most 7-year-olds have a hard time focusing on school. And I want you to listen to Dr. Sax and take his words to heart, that school in many ways works against boys. So you need to ask yourself, is your son in the right school? Is the school able to help your son? Is your son getting outside enough? Is your son getting enough exercise? In other words, are there simple things that you need to change in his environment that will really help him focus? If you didn't listen to my podcast on ADHD, whether your son has ADHD or not, listen to it because it's really good because we talk about boys a lot. But here's what I would recommend you do. Go to your pediatrician and call up and say, I'd like to come and talk to you alone. And write out a list of questions for your pediatrician. Write out a list of things that your son is doing that concern you. He's not finishing his schoolwork. He is very smart, but he doesn't turn things in. He's getting in trouble at school. He's getting in trouble in the playground. Anything you can think of. Don't do this at a well child check because they don't have the time. Go to your pediatrician and say, I want to talk specifically about this issue. What do you think about these things that are going on? What could be going on with my son? And your pediatrician will probably say things to you like this. I want you to consider, Vicki, is your son getting enough exercise? And you say, well, yes, he is. Okay. Are you concerned that your son could have a learning issue? You know, does he have dyslexia? Is he an auditory or visual learner? Does he have special educational needs? Of course, he's very smart. A lot of kids with dyslexia and learning issues are very smart, but they just have learning problems. Could your son be distracted because of something that's going on in his life? And then finally, could your son have attention deficit or hyperactivity? Ask the teacher. And teachers will tell you, but don't go on just what your teacher says because your teacher's seeing only a slice of his day. You and your husband know that son better than anybody. So again, trust your gut. You know, does dad do a lot of the same things? Does your son do a lot of what you do? You know, maybe you have ADHD or dad has ADHD and you've been treated and your son is just him all over again. I don't know. Do some digging. Go with the help of your pediatrician. If your pediatrician says it could be this or it could be that, take your son to a good education specialist or somebody who's a psychologist who specializes in education and have him or her run your son through a battery of tests. And they will pretty well, within an hour or two, be able to tease apart whether your son is dealing with ADHD or one of them. He could have attention issues, but not hyperactivity. He could have hyperactivity, but not attention issues. Or he could have a learning issue. Or he could have worry issues or be overly concerned about something and he's just acting it out in school. There are a host of different things that could be going on with your son. But the sooner you get to the bottom of the issue and what's going on, the better. Don't rush. Don't let your son have a label slapped on him too soon, because labels that get slapped on in early elementary schools stick with kids. And many kids get better at things and some kids don't, but don't let them get stuck with a label that is not appropriate and that's not correct. So that's what I would do for your son. And then just love him up. You're going to have a lot of fun with this boy. This boy's going somewhere, because boys who have a lot of energy and who are very smart, they fly. They're just kind of hard to live with sometimes. We should do a whole show on that. How to live with a child who's kind of hard to live with. Because the truth is most kids are hard to live with at sometimes. So maybe that would, if you want to hear a show on that, let me know and we'll do it. And I'll have all of you on. It would be a lot of fun. I want you to keep sending me your questions. You can email me your parenting questions to askmeg@megmeekermd.com. Again, email me your questions, askmeg@megmeekermd.com. I'd like to thank my guest, Dr. Leonard Sax, for joining me on these last 2 episodes. And I'd like to recap my points to ponder so that when the podcast shuts down, you have something to do. You have your marching orders. Post them on your fridge. Put them on your bathroom mirror, whatever you need. 1, with your son. Embrace your son's masculinity and his sexuality. Encourage him and make him Give himself time to develop. No quick labels. 2, recognize the temptation that your son faces and help him navigate those temptations. Don't blame him for having the temptations. Talk to him about the temptations and say, my job is to link arms with you. I'm not the enemy. The culture is. And 3, honor your son's need to become independent during his teen years. Honor his need to separate from you. He will come back, but he'll never come back if you don't first let him go. So, good parents, until next time, remember, great kids are raised. They're not born.
Hey, this is Bobby, producer of Meg Meeker's Parenting Great Kids podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening to episode 26, Raising Great Boys. And thanks to you, Dr. Meg's Parenting Revolution has grown to over 500,000 downloads. You can like Dr. Meeker on Facebook and follow her on Twitter and Instagram at MegMeekerMD. Just as a reminder, go to MegMeekerMD.com and sign up for her newsletter for giveaway opportunities and updates. And don't forget to share the podcast, write us a review, and click subscribe so you won't miss an episode.